Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
We can take people where most people cannot take them.
The generations
coming. That was something that wasn't supposed to play, but it played anyway. It's fine. How's it going, everybody? This is the Sneakers and Cleats podcast.
Nice start.
Yeah, great start.
Stumbling out of the blocks.
Not a Monday. It is a Thursday. It's fine.
Yes.
The fourth Monday of the week. Welcome.
Well, at least it was cool contemporary beats.
True. We'll get back to that in a second.
Yes.
This is episode 127, Thursday, August 22nd. Before we get started, I want to remind you all, subscribe to our YouTube channel, News 4 Fox SA. If you're so inclined, download, rate, review, subscribe.
Most people cannot take them.
The generations coming together.
This is Chuck Miketinac, and before we get to the Cowboys, I want to introduce RJ Ochoa. He's going to be joining us here. He's the editor-in-chief of Blogging with the Boys. RJ, how are you today, my friend? Cannot hear him there, Luis. We are having some technical difficulties here, so give us.
That's when you get the whole speak up, speak up. You speak to the back of the room. That's what Sister Florentia used to tell me in second grade.
Luis, you got it now?
Speak to the back of the room.
Anyway.
I don't know if you guys can hear me now.
We can hear you now. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying happy week 0. I'm surprised you guys aren't in Dublin. That station didn't send y'all out there. I kind of would have anticipated that. So, I'm sure it would have been cool. You guys could have had a couple Guinnesses.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would have loved to have a couple of Guinnesses.
The good news is we don't even have to go there to have a couple of Guinnesses, right?
Yeah, exactly. Luis, can you just take that open out or something, because it keeps playing accidentally.
It's all good.
Sorry, we're working through some issues here, but RJ, we're glad to have you on this week 0, because it seems like it's 0 hour for the Cowboys at all times when it comes to CeeDee and Dak and their contracts. So, how do you? Before I get to any of that, we're going to talk a lot of Cowboys today. We're going to also get into a retirement that I know hit a lot of people in the hearts. So we'll get to all that here in a second. Trivia comes first, though. So, RJ, last time you were on, we did the number game, but we ran out of numbers. So now we do trivia. So I have a trivia question I will ask you and Chuck, and you guys can go ahead and give me your answers now, or we can do it after the Cowboys stuff. So, trivia question is, in 2023, CeeDee Lamb set the Cowboys single-season record for receptions, targets, and yards, but not touchdowns. So that does beg the question, who holds the Cowboys' single-season record for receiving touchdowns? You guys go ahead and ponder that. Does a name come to mind, RJ, right off the bat?
It does, but I certainly would defect to Chuck first if he would like to go. I don't want to steal.
No, by all means, RJ, because I'll probably go to somebody that was never even on the roster. So
I'm going to go with Des Bryant. That's going to be my guess, sometime in that 2012 to 2014 range.
Wow, that's a good guess. I'll go with one of the other 88s, Irvin or Drew Pearson. Just to throw that out there, just to bring back the original.
You can't give me 2
88.
options. You have to give me one.
All right, I'll go with Mike.
I like your hedging, but
yes.
So Mike, I was surprised to find out. I mean, he's just not a touchdown guy. He played with them for 10 seasons, and he only had 49 between him and Aikman. So it's not Michael Irvin. It is Des Bryant. 16 touchdowns.
Wow, nice job, RJ.
16 touchdowns in that 2014 season. I think Terrell Owens in the 2006 season is second. So.
See, I even forgot the T.O. era.
How do you forget the T.O. era?
Dude, see that white on my head? Yeah, it's easy. Trust me, it's not the only thing. What's your name again?
Sometimes even I forget. Well, that was trivia for today. Let's get to the good stuffs here. Or bad stuff, depending on how you want to look at it. The black cloud over the Cowboys training camp is continuing to rear its ugly head. No contract for Dak done yet. No contract for CeeDee done yet. RJ, you think they'll get it done before the season, or will we see 88 on the field week 1, or what are your thoughts on this whole saga as it continues?
I mean, I as it relates to Dak, I had kind of said for a few months now that I would maybe not press the panic button, but lift the glass encasing around it, like read the instructions again on how to properly execute the panic button, sequence or whatever, you got to like twist both keys at the same time or whatever. If the Cowboys got through the Oxnard portion of training camp without a deal for Dak, and we're here. So if you need to know how to press the panic button, I'm your guy. But the CeeDee thing has kind of evolved and become a bigger cloud over that. Now, obviously, I think some of that is because he's holding out, and so it's a little bit more flagrant in that sense. It has been kind of silly every time we've asked these questions for the last few months, like, oh, it's, these are just voluntary workouts. Who cares if he misses them? Oh, this is just a mini camp. He doesn't even need to learn this stuff. He knows the offense. Oh, it's just the beginning of Oxnard. Everything will be fine. I think, given the proximity of week 1, you have to be willing to tolerate the idea that he could miss. I mean, the fact that we're this deep into this holdout, it seems like it has legitimate life. Maybe it's still, 49% or below. But it's no longer just this cute, funny little thing that we're throwing out for attention. It is a very real possibility in my mind. I can't believe that we're at this point and these continue to remain issues for the team, but that's kind of par for the course around here.
You're also getting to the point where injury for that week 1 game could rear its ugly head. Soft tissue injuries are something that is a real issue for all teams. And so if you just throw a guy in on a Monday right before the game and then you want to play him on Sunday, it might not be the safest issue at this point either. Chuck.
Yeah, I heard Chuck talking about that right as I came in, and that's a reality, right? And right. I think some people think you throw that out right now just as like, panic talk or whatever the case may be, but it's a very, very real thing. I mean, Zach Martin is going to be in the Hall of Fame someday and is better at his job than CeeDee is at his. And I mean that as no slight to CeeDee Lamb whatsoever.
But it took Zach Martin.
right. It took Zach Martin some time last year to kind of find his rhythm and find his routine. It took, Nick Bosa some time, who held out last year. It is very, very, very rare. The kind of only example you can come up with is Aaron Donald. People love to point out that he won Defensive Player of the Year every time he missed all of training camp. Cool. If you have the Aaron Donald of wide receivers, then by all means. But maybe if you have the Aaron Donald of wide receivers, you would pay him commensurate with that level of talent. So it's difficult to explain why we're still here.
Aaron Donald is also just one of one. So,
right.
What do you think about this whole situation right now, Chuck? We've been talking about this for what seems like 10 years now about CeeDee and Dak's contracts, and frankly, I'm just wanted to get done so we don't have to talk about it anymore. But moreover, what do you think of the situation?
Yeah, I mean, everything I think that RJ just said, I think is valid and real. And I think there's another part of this too, is like, even if he gets into camp next week, his football clock is off. His whole life, he's used to, ramping it up during the summer, getting ready for the fall, even going back to his high school days. So the fact that he hasn't been training and that time on task that everybody talks about and how much time these players can actually have now on the field together. I know the Cowboys will do this slow game and slow walk with CeeDee because McCarthy's done this a million times before. He knows there has to be a ramp-up period for CeeDee, or you are going to risk the fact that, CeeDee could get a soft tissue issue and have a soft tissue issue. Yes. So, yes, it's so layered, and obviously the longer it goes on, the more complicated it then becomes in terms of how is this going to look week 1. And then, if you're McCarthy, do you play him limited snaps in week 1, maybe into week 2? I mean, how long does that go on before you can really cut him loose and feel comfortable with him not pulling a hamstring or a groin muscle?
Yeah, RJ, I was listening to your conversation that you had with Emmitt Smith from a few weeks ago, and he has a point, right? Like, you're not really setting Dak up to succeed if you don't have CeeDee on the field. Like, if you chop off my right arm, I'm probably going to not be as good at football, Like, that's kind of what you're doing to Dak if you don't give him his deal or give CeeDee his deal, and put him on the field so this team can succeed.
I mean, it's absurd. Like, I mean, we use the expression like painted themselves into a corner. Like, there's paint on the floor, there's paint on the walls, there's paint on the ceiling. Like, there's paint in every kind of dimension here. And I agree with Chuck, and I agree with you, Matt. Like, it's very possible, right, that they're limited with CeeDee. So, okay, Dak, check it out. You're on our team, which means any success you have drives success that we have. We have mutual goals here. So we want you to go to Cleveland, home of one of the better defenses in the NFL last year, home of the literal reigning defensive player of the year, Texas A&M zone and Myles Garrett. and we're going to give you a rookie left tackle and maybe a rookie center, and your best wide receiver there, who's caught more touchdowns from you than anybody throughout the course of your career, he's either going to be limited or not be there entirely. Your head coach, if you want to look to him for a point of stability, yeah, that dude is in a contract year as well. Like, it is nothing but pure, unadulterated, 100% self-induced chaos surrounding the most important player and kind of nucleus on the team. It's very difficult to explain other than either mass incompetence or this ultimate need for attention in the worst kind of way possible.
I heard you reference Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe there. Obviously, his main question, there's a lot of questions surrounding this team in the roster right now, especially on that offensive line. I want to ask you, what are your main questions that you still have about this team as we go into week 3 of the preseason and then roster cut down day, which I believe is a week from yesterday? So what questions do you have about the roster at this moment?
I do think that Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe have lived up to our wildest expectations, which is amazing, and they deserve all credit in the world in the scouting department and the coaching staff. Kudos to them, obviously. So that has helped, I think, stabilize the departures of Tyron Smith and Tyler Biadasz. I maintain a level of question around Jalen Tolbert as the team's wide receiver 3. I feel like they went into this just thinking he was that guy because they wanted it to be true. But the reality is he hasn't necessarily proven anything over the course of his first 2 seasons. Now, he's had a tremendous training camp and deserves all credit in the world for that. And maybe he truly will ultimately be something, because the first 2 years of his career, they placed these impossible expectations upon him. But to the main point at hand, they're on the verge of doing it again if CeeDee Lamb is not there or is hindered in some sort of way. Now you can't be wide receiver 3, Jalen Tolbert. We need you to be something more.
Right.
Defensively, I still don't know if I buy the kumbaya that is kind of existing, the harmony between Mike Zimmer and everybody. This is a coach with a long-standing reputation of being quite surly. Now, when they get out of the weather in California and whatnot, maybe things start to normalize a little bit relative to the Mike Zimmer that we've known for the last decade or so. But I've been pleasantly surprised. That was probably the thing and the decision the Cowboys made over the offseason that I was lowest on relative to just kind of people on the internet. But so far, the returns are positive, and that is a really impressive thing.
Chuck, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the vibes I get just from talking to players during OTAs and minicamp is that Mike Zimmer is hard, but at least Mike Zimmer is fair. He wants you to do certain things. He expects you to execute those things, and there's a plan. So I think for a lot of players, especially younger players, I think, there's something to be said about having guidance like that, and it's going to be a little firmer, I think, than what they're used to. So, I put all this, and I know I've said this before, this kind of reminds me of where we were with the Texans last year, right? You didn't know if they were going to be good or if they were going to be really bad, right? Because there were so many so many boxes that needed to be checked in order for them to then have a good season. Well, the Texans did all that and more. The fact that they did what they did with all of those injuries last year still blows my mind.
Especially on the O-line, yeah.
Yeah, they were one of the most injured teams in all of football last year. And for sure, of teams that were injured the most, they were the only ones that were in the playoffs, much less win a game. So, all those things that RJ said, I mean, I'm in agreement with. I mean, what is the offensive line ultimately going to look like? What is the running back depth going to look like? Who's going to get the rock? Who's going to make the team? What is the wide receiver room going to look like? Your best offensive player from a year ago, 88, still hasn't touched the practice field, and we're closing in on the opener. So there's so many question marks. Again, they might be able to check them all, and it's quite possible they know a hell of a lot more than we do about what they have. But until we get there and we see it, I think it's fair that we can spitball this.
I don't remember a time going into a training camp when I paid so much attention to a team and reported on a team and all that stuff. I don't remember a time that we were sitting here on an August 22nd, just a couple of weeks away from kickoff, and I had this many questions about a roster. Like, usually you know, these are the starters, these are the guys who you're going to be relying on. This is who we're expecting to take a jump. We just don't have a lot of answers right now when it comes to this roster. And it's at so many key positions. Like, even this week, I think they're starting to figure out the defensive line. I mean, they just signed Linval Joseph, Carl Lawson, brought in Jordan Phillips. But how are they going to impact this roster? What does that mean about Mozzie Smith? Is Mozzie showing not enough? Is he showing more than enough? Like, we just don't know those questions regarding the young players on this roster. And the amount of questions that I have is really, really concerning, RJ.
I think that it's strange because the questions come from a place of today's media and today's fans are so intelligent relative to the past, right? Just because people have so much access to information and knowledge and what have you. And so we're kind of conditioned to ask these deeper level questions, right? Like we don't just accept what the GM or the coach says on the radio that we hear once a week or whatever. But sometimes the answer is the most obvious thing. I really would love to give Mozzie some more benefit of the doubt, but maybe the answer to them bringing in 2 defensive tackles over the course of the last week is that they don't like the one that they currently have. And
that's the sense I got.
Right. And you guys, and Chuck, you mentioned who's going to run the rock for them. If there's a take I'm sort of proud of over the course of this entire time, it's that Zeke Elliott is going to be that dude. They can sit here and they can tell us that he's going to be some third down specialist or that he's not going to this, he's not going to that. They have given him the superstar treatment throughout the first 2 preseason games, just a jersey without any kind of pads. There is no doubt in my mind that Zeke Elliott is going to easily lead this team in carries. And so I know that sounds kind of silly to us, all due respect to Zeke, because how could that possibly be your plan in 2024? Right. But again, all evidence that they're kind of, showing us really proves that. But we refuse to believe it out of a place of conditioned logic and intellect, if that makes sense.
It does. Zeke's best season came 8 years ago, and now we're talking about him leading the team in carries in 2024. It's kind of crazy. But regarding the running back room, since we're here, I'm confused as to what they're going to do with Deuce Vaughn and what they're doing with that 4th running back spot, or if they're going to have a 4th running back spot. Like you have Rico and you have Zeke. Obviously, those are the 2 stalwarts. And then is it going to be Malik Davis? Is it going to be Royce? Is it going to be Deuce? Like, do you keep 4 on this roster? And do you think that Deuce has shown enough to make this roster at this point, RJ?
I didn't really feel that he had prior to last Saturday. And it seems, a bit trigger happy to jump off of one specific preseason game. And even then it was like 3 plays that Deuce had that, floated butterflies in all of our hearts the way we first felt them when he was first drafted by the team last year. I don't know that he offers you as much in an overall sense as Royce Freeman does. Royce has been around the NFL. Maybe you kind of trust that veteranness a little bit more. But, maybe you do really want that specific thing, that specific tool or weapon or whatever that you feel like Deuce can offer you. I've maintained that we still don't quite know enough about these new kickoffs and this new world. Obviously, everybody's kind of keeping their cards close to the vest throughout the preseason and exhibition portion of things. Maybe Deuce is valuable there. I mean, we really have no earthly idea. If I had to bet right now, I would say that he doesn't make the 53-man roster. He's probably the 55th or 56th guy, and it just kind of comes down to where you want to go long or short in different places, and that may squeak him onto the roster when it's all said and done.
Chuck, what do you think about the running back room right now? I mean, obviously, that's been one of the main questions coming into the season is who the hell is going to tote the rock for the boys, but I don't think we have any more confidence today than we did weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was spitballing. I know we were. They need to go pick somebody up, one of the talented backs that are out there, or at least one of the veteran backs that are out there. I think they're going to try to do what they can to keep Deuce Vaughn on the roster. I mean, they put him out wide on occasion, giving him those kind of looks. But I would think it's going to be Zeke. And then, Royce Freeman, again, we talked about this last week or the other day. He's a guy that he can get you some yards. He's been there, done that. He's played in some, he's bounced around a little bit, but he looks the part in terms of when you watch him glide and his size and all that. I just don't know that they're not going to be doing it a little differently than they have done it before, based on if you're getting the ball to your best players, if that's the goal, right, and that's where you feel like you can do the most damage, where does Zeke, Royce Freeman, Deuce Vaughn, any of these other guys line up against 88, your tight ends, your other wide receivers? I don't know, just they're going to do it a little differently.
Maybe. Mike McCarthy loves keeping 4 tight ends on his roster, too, so that's like 4 roster spots right there that you got to keep. And now you also have a third quarterback that I guess is guaranteed a roster spot now that Jerry Jones wanted to spout off the other day, saying that Trey Lance has made this roster. He's done enough to make this roster. So we haven't mentioned Trey Lance yet, RJ. Where do you stand on them keeping him on this roster, or what their actual plan is at quarterback behind Dak?
Well, as somebody who, uses a lot of Jerry Jones quotes to put bread on his family's table, I did not, I was not shocked at what he said. And while I'm grateful for any opportunity that Jerry speaks, I really did not find that to be shocking. This was kind of a water is wet thing. There was no world where Trey wasn't going to make the team. And I know that Trey has not looked great, but it really works against logic to cut him at this point in time. And that's not from a sunk cost fallacy standpoint. It's from the perspective of today's rules sort of almost force you to logic yourself into carrying 3 quarterbacks on your active roster, or at least have a third, obviously, on your preseason team, because you can have that third quarterback active on game days without devoting one of your 46-man roster spots to it. And that's how the Cowboys kept Trey Lance in uniform. And ironically enough, that's a rule born out of Trey's old team in the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And so it made all the sense in the world to keep him around, not because he's a threat to Dak Prescott in 2025 or whatever the case may be, but just because I also think that there are 2 types of backup quarterbacks, and Cooper Rush is the more conventional one, to where if Dak had to miss a game or 2 or 5 like he did 2 years ago, you want that guy in there. Like, he's the dude who can drive the bus and just kind of keep the ship afloat. He knows, how to press the panic button himself. But if Dak were to be lost for the season in week 1, I think that Trey Lance is the kind of guy you want. He's the lotto ticket. I mean, are the odds high? Absolutely not. But he has incredible athletic talent and prowess that could ultimately turn into something special. So it would behoove the Cowboys to keep him around and keep them around kind of all together, which is why Jerry's saying it wasn't necessarily brand new information for me.
Chuck, Trey Lance stuff?
First of all, I think Trey Lance has made incredible strides between when I saw him at OTAs and minicamp till now, right? And I thought the best line was from Nick Eatman, I believe, who said, he's not turning the ball over, but he's not making any plays either. And so there's something to be said, though, about not turning the ball over. They had a couple of really long drives in that first preseason game where he got the preponderance of the time, and then they had some really long drives in the last preseason game too. So yes, he's going against 2s and 3s. Everybody understands all that, but there is progress being made here. Now, is he ever going to get to the point where he's, drops back and the ball's out on time and it's going to where it needs to go? Hopefully, but I mean, these guys need reps, and nobody needs reps more than Trey Lance, given how little he played in college. And so, can he? I mean, again, to RJ's point, he's super athletic, right? He's got an arm. There's a lot of things that you can't coach that he has. The other part of it is, though, there's a lot of things that Cooper Rush doesn't have that Cooper Rush does 20 times better than Trey Lance. So if you could mold the 2 together, you'd probably have somebody as good as Dak Prescott. But there's a drop-off, clearly a drop-off between, and there is on every team in the league, almost every team in the league, between the 1, the 2, and then the 3.
Yeah.
There's just not that many great quarterbacks in the planet, guys that play the job or do the job that well. So I think there's progress being made. And, he did have a $5 million bonus kicker that, he's going to get whether he's cut or not. So there's a lot of incentivizing in terms of where the Cowboys are in order to have this guy on the team. And as long as he's making progress, I'm okay with him being the 3rd string guy. It is a little weird, though, that they are going to keep him on the 53 because there's so few bodies available, as we know, on game day. I mean, you got, hopefully maybe Trey can play a little special teams too. Help out there.
Well, I mean, Jerry referred to putting him at linebacker, so maybe
right. Because that's the world we're living in. If you can't play special teams and you're the fringe guy, the 6th receiver, you better be damn good at special teams. That's why you're there on Sunday.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks until we get to kickoff against the Browns. I would like to ask our resident Browns fan over here, Bob Gambert, who is currently or was watching Browns highlights here just moments ago. You're doing a film breakdown. Okay. Are you Baldy now, I guess? You never heard Brian Baldinger? No? No. Oh, okay. Never mind.
You were watching the cut-ups.
Do you have any questions from viewers or anything like that?
We do. Well, one thing, we were talking a little bit here in the comments about how many wins the Cowboys are going to have this year. And Ramiro says no more than 10 wins this year, although he hopes that he's wrong. And Robert Smith, who's always here for us. He's
Robert.
Here almost every episode. Always had a lot of good things
Thank
to say.
you, Robert.
He says, I'm of the mindset that the Cowboys need to use Deuce in as many different sets as possible. His runs between the tackles are strong, plus he can catch the ball in the backfield.
RJ, I don't know if you can hear him, but basically, first comment was 10 wins, more over or under for the Cowboys this year.
I'll set it at 10.5 just to kind of force a decision. I don't like to live life on the fence. I think I'd still take the over. I mean, what I'm about to say is going to like write enough jokes for itself, but over the last 3 years, only one team has more regular season wins than the Cowboys. And nobody's hanging a banner for that. Nobody's, planning a parade or anything like that. But that one team is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Cowboys have more regular season wins over the last 3 years than the Eagles and the Bills and the Bengals and the Ravens and the Niners. And, again, any non-Patrick Mahomes-led team. And for whatever reason, we act like the quarterback is trash and the head coach is trash. And yes, what happens with the team is very loud because people like you do an incredible job of covering them. Not that you two are contributing to the loudness, but to the outstanding coverage. And so that being said, this is what Mike McCarthy does. And again, I've never seen a head coach with as much career accomplishments as McCarthy get so little credit for that. I mean, the guy has a Super Bowl and people act like he's a handicap on the teams that he's been a part of. And to the McCarthy point, and look, I had my issues with him, obviously, with what happened in the playoffs. A year ago, he looked at the Cowboys offense that had been highly successful, had literally been the best in the NFL, and said, you know what? I think it can be better. And then when he said that, everybody said, well, this dude you're casting off, he's going to go light the world on fire in Los Angeles. And not only did that guy not do that, but everybody made excuses for why he didn't do it because of injuries and things like that when they're not afforded those same benefits and luxuries in Dallas. And meanwhile, what did Mike McCarthy do? He was right. He was actually completely correct in that the offense could be better. He turned in the best statistical season we've ever seen from Dak Prescott, finished second in MVP voting, as is well documented. The best statistical season in CeeDee Lamb's career that was so robust that we sit here on August 22nd that he's using it as a defense to get an incredibly overwhelming contract. And how many people have you ever seen give him his due credit or props or whatever, stickers, cookies for this particular accomplishment? People gloss over the fact that Dan Campbell blew a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game, or that Kyle Shanahan literally did not know the rules of overtime in the Super Bowl. But we get mad because Mike McCarthy lost to a Packers team that we acknowledge has the next dude at quarterback in the playoffs. It's an amazing sort of thing. And so I do think that inherently lowers whatever proverbial over-under, which is why, to kind of make a long story short, I'll take the over on 10.5 wins for the Cowboys.
I'll say right at 10, just because I think at some point, when does their luck run out on this? And you have to have some luck, right? And I don't know that they're as deep as they have been. And I think ultimately when you're talking about 17 games, that's going to rear its head at some point, right? I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of lauding McCarthy around here in terms of what he's done and, what this franchise is capable of doing under him. That playoff game, that was a whole system failure. Like everybody, there's enough blame to go around on that, not just the head coach. Although when it's that bad, I think it's easy to blame the head coach because it's, what are you going to do? Blame all 53 guys that sucked that day? And not everybody did, but I mean, defensively, right? They couldn't stop anybody that day. And
yet Dan Quinn is hyped and regarded today. That's an amazing phenomenon.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I look at Mike McCarthy a little bit like I look at Sean Payton, but they have such different, people view them so differently. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl a long time ago. Sean Payton won a Super Bowl a long time ago. They've both been very good head coaches. They've both won a lot of football games, but yet one is lauded and the other one is kind of cast aside, which is a little confusing to me, even though Mike McCarthy doesn't do himself any favors in the playoffs anymore. So
I think the answer is that Sean Payton has better PR. Sean Payton is a little bit, in a Mike Zimmer way, obviously we're on a staff together, more surly. He's got more friends in the media. And so that's just kind of how the narrative paints itself. I mean, Sean Payton went 7-9 3 years in a row with Drew Brees as his quarterback. We penalize Mike McCarthy all the time for not winning a Super Bowl, more Super Bowls with Aaron Rodgers, yet we dismiss this idea from Sean Payton. It really is amazing. But I agree with you, though, Chuck. There will be some regression to the mean. There has to, right? Like, you can't fly this close to the sun 4 years in a row. But, I mean, I'm willing to give them some benefit of the doubt, at least with regards to the regular season. Postseason's a whole different animal.
That's fair.
All right, I want to get to one other thing before we let RJ go. Also, I would like to pat myself on the back real quick for going 30 minutes here and not mentioning Bo Nix one time. So, just saying, he's been named the starter. We're going to win the Super Bowl. The Broncos are going to be great.
Man, I'll tell you what, they sure played with some nasty the other day, boy.
That's all I'm saying. It's actually, I think it's a personal record over the last couple of days. I usually go with that about 10 minutes, and that's usually my quota. So I do want to get to, we are never going to hear Bill Land say, "Oh, mama," again. The longtime Spurs broadcaster, Spurs play-by-play man, Bill Land, who's announced yesterday he's retiring after 21 years on the mic for San Antonio, comes basically nearly a year after Land was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a rare blood cancer. He says he's doing great and that his medical that didn't really have a lot to do with his decision. However, it is sad. It's a sad day for all Spurs fans that you're not going to hear Bill Land saying, "Oh, mama, Wembenyama" anymore. I wanted to just take a couple of minutes here, share a couple of stories. RJ, I know that you are a big fan of his. What are your thoughts on the retirement?
Yeah, I mean, I live and operate in a world revolving around the Dallas Cowboys, and so that exists on a national level, more often than not, which is what makes people like Bill Land so special, and that's what makes RSNs so special. And I don't know what the future holds for that. That's a whole different conversation. But because of that future, there will never be another Bill Land. There will never be somebody who instills and incites emotions. And some of that is the era that Bill Land happened to coexist in and amplify to an entirely different level, through his, word choice and just perfect timing and whatnot. I think people like this become synonymous for us with the teams that we hold near and dear to our heart. I mean, think about, people can name where they were at certain moments, certain Bill Land calls. He served as the common denominator for people who, who got married, who had children, who experienced loss. I mean, he was kind of the metronome, the steady beat throughout life for a lot of people, through a lot of things. And even obviously for the franchise. And you mentioned obviously Wemby and how he kind of passed the torch into this new era. And so he's as much a part of the Spurs for me as Tim, Tony, Manu. I mean, as any kind of staple you could possibly imagine. And so I wish him all the best and his family all the best, certainly, in whatever comes next.
Well said, RJ. I mean, for me, I had the pleasure of working with Bill for many years. And, I think the thing that impresses me most about Bill is he's just a regular dude. There's no ego. There's no bravado. There's no beating the chest. He's a kind-hearted man, and he's really damn good at what he does. You add all that together. You put him together with Sean Elliott, who I would say similar things about, and everybody talks about, having chemistry on TV and how do you make that happen? I guarantee you this. You put Bill Land with anybody that's likable, there's going to be chemistry. You put anybody with Sean Elliott, there's going to be chemistry. Those guys are pros, and that's been the cool thing about this. When you win as big as the Spurs did, I mean, those guys, Bill and Sean, but, I know we're speaking specifically about Bill, but, like Bill is the author of these championship teams and that voice and those calls. And that's what stays in your head. That's the conduit to everybody that's watching on television. And so, to RJ's point, I mean, he's just as important in terms of brand building and what this organization has become and what it's achieved. What a career. And, I'll say this too. I mean, with all that he's been dealing with, would you have ever known it? I mean, he kept that under wraps forever, Tough dude, came to work, never pissed and moaned about anything publicly or woe is me or give me a trophy for coming to work. I mean, everything that Bill Land is what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, just solid freaking stud.
I can't add anything to that. That was perfectly said by both of you. RJ, thanks so much. We apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but thanks for sticking with us and thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the Broncos' new uniforms and that you have to look at them all the time.
They're okay. Hold on. They're not that bad.
Here we go for another 10 minutes now, RJ.
I don't like that the pants, they have the line on the side. I don't like that the jerseys don't have the same line because that just looks kind of weird to me. But the jerseys really aren't that bad. The whites with the icy white helmets are awesome. We understand that the altitude in Denver is extraordinarily high. We don't need the 5280, we all know, okay, we're all good. It's going to be okay, You don't need the mountains on the shoulders either.
No, I don't.
I know where we are, right?
I just need the horse on the top of the stadium on that one end zone. That's all I need. You got to keep that.
How about the old throwback uniforms though? Because they came out with the newer like rendition of the throwbacks, which are awesome.
Dang, dude, is this airing in Denver?
It should.
The Broncos are a borderline Tiffany brand franchise in the NFL, and they've done a lot to ruin that over the course of the last decade. They've got to earn a whole hell of a lot before I'm willing to give them any kind of flowers for anything. And they've got to look a lot different from UTSA for me to say that their uniforms are awesome. So.
RJ, you just need to believe. All right, you need to. You need to believe in this team. All right. Thanks, RJ. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, RJ, keep up the good work, man. We enjoy your work. We enjoy your takes and your perspective. So thank you for stopping by today.
Y'all are the best. Y'all have a great rest of the day, rest of the weekend, and looking forward to chatting throughout the regular season.
Yes, sir.
You too. Thanks, sir. That's RJ Ochoa with Blogging with the Boys. Love his insight.
Yeah, he does. He's got good takes, and he's thoughtful. He's funny. I mean, he's very good at what he does.
He is. He's absolutely. So go check out all of his articles and stuff like that. We'll have him on throughout the season whenever he has some time. And I see Bob over there looking at the new Broncos jerseys. Some of them are bad, but most of them are pretty good.
Yeah, that stuff they wore the other night to me looked like they matched road and home uniforms and just flipped a coin and said, okay, we're going with road jerseys at home, but we're doing the road pants at home.
The way
today.
they did it, they mix and match. They made everything like mix and matchable. So you can have
Garanimals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They throw you back to the Garanimals days. That's what
pretty
nice.
much. They made it so you can have the orange pants with the blue jersey and it'll look fine. But it's like, just have a set jersey. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the mix and match. But anyway, one quick thing before we get out of here. Sinclair, our mother company here, parent company, has a new podcast that they just came out with. It's called The Triple Option. That's what messed us up at the beginning was their open kept playing accidentally. But if you want to check that out, download, rate, review, subscribe, and get that on YouTube. We can do that on any podcast app as well. It's Urban Meyer. It's Mark Ingram. It's
Rob Stone.
Rob Stone, thank you. Do you have it right now? Okay, we're going to play the opener real quick.
Light it. We can take people where most people cannot take them.
The generations coming together.
That place was jumping.
The Triple Option, presented by Wendy's, wherever you get your podcasts.
Can't get a much better cast than that. I mean, one of the best coaches of all time, one of the best running backs in Alabama history, a Heisman Trophy winner, and then Rob Stone.
Yeah, Rob Stone, very good. Elite hair, too. By the way.
Elite hair.
Yep.
But anyway, check that out if you want to. Hopefully we'll get Urban or Mark on here in the next couple of weeks so we can talk to them about all the college football stuff. College football starting on Saturday, week 0. We have it's here. Football's here.
It was like the dam broke, right? It's not only here, it's like in your face every single day. I mean, yes, thank you. Thank you, Jesus.
Also, before we get out of here, quick shout out to the Bernie Little League. They are playing Little League World Series this weekend. They play in the U.S. Championship on Saturday. If they win that, then they go to the Little League World Series Championship on Sunday. We're sending Zach Hedrick out there for all the live coverage, and it's awesome. Like, congratulations to them. It's phenomenal seeing the entire city of San Antonio, the entire area around Bexar County kind of rallying behind these 12, 13, 14-year-old kids.
Yeah, like grown men. I mean, they play great baseball. They pitch, they catch, they hit, and the poise that they play with them, the maturity, they're aggressive. You know, they do it faith-based. What's not to like, man?
I just love that
today the country, Sunday the world.
I just love that there's a kid named Doc. That's my favorite part. Kid named Doc Mogford. He's 12-year-old.
Wait, one quick thought on that, though, too. The pitcher, the Hurst kid.
Yeah, Julian
Did you
Hurst.
see him catch the other day? Did you see his amazing hair after the game? He just caught a ball game, and he had David Chancellor hair for the TV interview. It was like somebody had run out there with makeup and this kid, like, how does that happen?
Elite hair.
100%.
Chuck, last time local team was McAllister All-Stars, right?
Yes, 2016 team. There was a 2016 McAllister team and a 2009.
Didn't some of those kids end up in the big leagues?
We had one kid get drafted off the 09 team. I don't know if any of the guys, I don't think so, off the 2016 team, but I could be wrong.
If anybody knows, it'd be you.
Well,
Yeah,
that's not
honestly,
necessarily
that's
true.
Or Jack Green.
Because I will have forgotten.
All right, that's all we got for you today. We have a lot more on Monday. Don will be back. Chuck will be here. We are going to do our very first high school hype squad on Monday because high school football starts next week. We'll break down the TNL Top 10. We'll do all that good stuff, plus talk some more Cowboys and Spurs. Please join us then, and we will not have all of the technical difficulties that happened at the beginning of this. So, especially because Luis is going to get his head out of his ass. All right. I'll see you then.